halfling paladin sat in bed, gazing out a dusty old window that looked out onto the moors. He kept his sword by his bed tonight, as he had the past 3 nights in this old manse, even though his 3 traveling companions were in other beds nearby. It was well past midnight, but he was still awake, staring apprehensively out the window. He jolted under the sheets and whipped his head toward the door to his party's communal room. The door had opened with a long, whining creak. His chest tightened and his pulse quickened. He reached for his sword. The leather wrapped around its pommel was cool in his grip as he stared unflinchingly toward the darkness of the hall beyond. Yet even as he steeled himself for whatever terror he knew lurked within this old house, he felt a memory from his childhood tug at his mind. An old nursery rhyme, a grim one, the kind that parents sing to their children to scare them into behaving. Without thinking, he sung the words under his breath. Lock the door, blow out the light. The hungry Oni haunts the night. He stood, and the chill of the floor rushed up through his bare feet. He strode toward the door, past the sleeping human wizard, past the elven barbarian deep in a trance, and past the snoring halfling cleric, his friend from the old country. He stopped at the threshold of the dark hallway and stared into the abyss. Hide and tremble, little one. The Oni wants to have some fun. His grip on the blade tightened until his knuckles were white and his small hand trembled. He took a deep breath and plunged into the hall. Only the faint glow of the moonlight through the windows lit his path. It struck the suits of armor that lined the hall and cast spectral shadows across the wall. Hear it scratching on the door. See its shadow across the floor. He stopped dead in the middle of the hallway, and fear and dawning realization clutched his heart. He turned back toward the door to his room, praying to Yandala not to see what he thought he would see. The door, slightly ajar, was scored by deep claw marks. Within, a long shadow crept across the floor toward his friends' beds, and as he wheeled and ran back toward the room, he realized he had never been the one singing. The sun won't rise for quite a while. Till then, beware the Oni's smile. First, I want to thank James Hayek for writing that introduction that I did. This comes from a great article called How to Play an Oni Like a Living Nightmare, and the link will be in the description below. Welcome, my name is Dwight Skull from Skull RPG, and today we're going to talk about the origins and motives of the Oni, which used to be known as Ogre Mages in previous editions of Dungeons & Dragons. The Oni are no longer relatives to ogres in 5th edition D&D, but are a perfect monster to fulfill one of 3 roles. First, they are large-sized creatures with over 100 hit points that will regenerate with seemingly no way to stop that regeneration. It used to be fire in older editions of D&D, but the monster manual doesn't list anything to prevent the regeneration from happening, so I guess you gotta kill the things. Second, they can cast invisibility or darkness at will as an action and need to concentrate on those spells to keep them going. This means that the Oni love to surprise attack foes. Third, they can shapeshift to be a small halfling or gnome or a medium humanoid, elf, human, dwarf, something like that, or appear to be a large giant. This means that the Oni could be a helpful NPC halfling one moment, and then when the time is right, they could strike down the weakest player. So why don't you smash that like button in the face, and then go invisible next round to fight the like button again. In D&D version 1, they were cast as Ogre Mages and literally called the quote-unquote Japanese versions of traditional ogres. Now, they've been recast as the traditional boogeyman that love to prey on the weak and eat children in 5th edition. The Oni are big brutes with over 100 health points, but they fight as if they're rogues. They strike the weak, they stalk their victims, they wait until the cover of night to strike, they use hit and run tactics and are built for that. They will not square off against the fighter like an ogre or a giant would. Instead, they will harry the party and strike at the most opportune moment. One idea is to have the Oni be the final boss of a dungeon, but every fight along the way it appears and deals damage and then becomes invisible a round or 2 later or after it takes half health. It then regenerates its wounds for the next room's encounter. It can even be used to disrupt the players from taking short or long rests in the dungeon if you feel particularly evil. In addition to hit and run tactics, the Oni may have attained magical items to use, and it will work with other unsavory humanoids and monsters to obtain these magical items. The Oni is really one of the most underutilized monsters in the monster manual, as it is able to take a punch, it can introduce fear and paranoia into your game easily, it could be a final boss for a cave, or it could be a minion of a far more evil boss that you want to introduce later into your campaign. So thanks for listening to the origins and motives of the Oni, and remember to smash the like button in the face so the next round you can cast invisibility and fight the like button again later in the dungeon.